Italo Balbo served as Italy's Marshal of the Air Force, Governor of Italian Libya, and Commander of Italian North Africa. Popular and charismatic, he was sometimes viewed as a possible successor to Benito Mussolini. His ability to speak English and connect with Americans made him respected abroad, while Mussolini increasingly saw him as a political threat. Balbo opposed anti-Semitism and was one of the few top fascists against Italy's alliance with Nazi Germany. As his criticism of fascism grew, Mussolini reportedly became so uneasy that newspapers were banned from mentioning Balbo's name more than once a month. After Italy entered World War II on June 10, 1940, Balbo was put in charge of planning the invasion of Egypt. On June 28, 1940, while flying to the Libyan airfield of Tobruk, which had just been attacked by British aircraft, his bomber approached the airfield low and against the sun. Italian anti-aircraft crews mistook it for an enemy plane and shot it down, killing everyone aboard. Balbo was 44. Rumors that Mussolini ordered his assassination persist. Giuseppe Tellera took command of the doomed Italian 10th Army in late 1940 as it tried to stop the British assault on the fortified camp at Nibewa in Egypt. In January 1941, British and Australian forces pushed the Italians back across Libya. Tellera ordered a retreat toward Benghazi, but the British had already blocked the coastal highway. On February 6th, the Italians tried to break through at the Battle of Beda Farm, but their frontal, poorly coordinated tank attacks failed. Tellera personally joined the fighting inside an M1340 tank during a final desperate assault before the 10th Army remnants surrendered. British troops later found him badly wounded inside a disabled tank. He died from his injuries the next day, aged 58. Impressed by his resistance, the British buried him in Benghazi with full military honors. Carlo Bergamini was a high-ranking Italian admiral who took command of the entire Italian fleet in March 1943. On September 8, 1943, his fleet was preparing to oppose the Allied landing at Salerno when Italy announced its armistice. Bergamini was ordered to sail to Allied-controlled Malta to surrender his fleet, leaving La Spezia for the naval base at La Maddalena in Sardinia. The next day, he learned the Germans had seized the base during the chaotic Italian surrender, so the fleet continued toward Allied-controlled Tunisia. That afternoon, German Do-217 bombers intercepted the fleet near Porto Torres. The bombers stayed beyond the reach of Italian anti-aircraft guns before Bergamini's flagship, Roma, was hit by Fritz X guided bombs, an advanced anti-ship weapon unfamiliar to the Italians. After two devastating hits, the battleship exploded and sank, killing Bergamini and around 1,350 crewmen. Enrico Francisci was a black-shirt general who gained recognition during the 1937 Battle of Santander in the Spanish Civil War. In July 1942, he was given command of 6 black-shirt battalions attached to Italy's 8th Army on the Eastern Front. His forces helped repel a Soviet attack on the Don River, but he was wounded and sent back to Italy. He was later appointed Inspector General of the Black Shirts in Sicily. After the Allied landings in Sicily on July 10, 1943, Francisci was ordered to coordinate a counterattack against American troops at Licata. At dawn the next day, he personally led an assault. During the fighting near Favarotta, he was standing on a self-propelled artillery vehicle to direct his troops when a tank shell decapitated him. Achille Starace was the most fanatical enforcer of fascist rituals and Mussolini's personality cult, and Major General in the Italian army. He took part in the Italian invasion of Ethiopia and later became Chief of Staff of the Black Shirts, remaining in the role until his dismissal for incompetence. After the fall of Benito Mussolini in 1943, Starace was arrested by Pietro Badoglio's royalist government, despite already losing most of his influence years before. He later tried to regain Mussolini's favor in the German-backed Italian Social Republic, but was arrested again by former colleagues and imprisoned in a camp in Verona. He was eventually released and moved to Milan, but on April 29, 1945, anti-fascist partisans recognized and captured him during a morning jog. He was taken to Piazzale Loreto and shown Mussolini's hanging body, which he saluted moments before being shot in the back. His corpse was then hung beside Mussolini's. Rodolfo Graziani was one of Mussolini's most notorious commanders, known as the Butcher of Fezzan and the Butcher of Ethiopia. During the pacification of Libya, he used concentration camps, forced deportations, and poison gas against resistance fighters. As Viceroy of Ethiopia, he survived an assassination attempt and responded with the Yekadit 12 massacre, where Italian forces killed thousands of civilians in Addis Ababa. During World War II, he commanded Italian forces in North Africa before later leading the army of the Nazi-backed Italian Social Republic. When Mussolini fled Milan in April 1945, Graziani stayed behind in Como, avoiding Mussolini's fate. He eventually surrendered to an American OSS officer near Lake Como and was jailed. An Italian military tribunal later sentenced him to 19 years, but by 1954 his health sharply declined due to a stomach ulcer, and his mental state worsened to the point that he sometimes believed he was still ruling in Addis Ababa. After surgery, he briefly recovered before dying from a heart attack in Rome on January 11, 1955, aged 72. More than 100,000 people attended his funeral, with crowds carrying fascist banners and giving fascist salutes. Mario Roatta, nicknamed the Beast by Yugoslavs, commanded the Italian Second Army during the occupation of Yugoslavia. He designed harsh anti-partisan policies in the Balkans and issued the infamous Circular 3C, which led to mass deportations, executions, village burnings, hostage shootings, and the internment of thousands of civilians, including women and children, in camps such as Rab concentration camp. In November 1943, the Allies pressured Badoglio to remove Roatta as Army Chief of Staff. Yugoslavia later sought his extradition, but Britain blocked the effort. Roatta was eventually put on trial in Italy, but escaped from Rome's Virgilio Army Hospital in March 1945. A big reward was offered for his capture, and protests over his escape turned into riots that left one person dead. He fled to Spain, where dictator Francisco Franco protected him. Roatta returned to Rome in 1966 and lived quietly until dying of natural causes on January 7, 1968, at age 80. Lorenzo Chierici served as Mussolini's chief of police in the critical months of 1943. Just days before Mussolini's downfall, Chierici personally warned him that members of the Grand Council were plotting against him. After Mussolini was arrested on July 25th, Chierici failed to launch a crackdown and even cooperated with the new government. Following the armistice of Cassibile, which ended fighting between Italy and the Allies, Chierici was arrested in Rome by the Germans and handed over to Mussolini's new regime. Branded a traitor, he was imprisoned in Verona and brutally tortured. In February 1944, he was found dead in his cell under suspicious circumstances. Historians believe he was murdered to prevent him from testifying at the Verona trial, because, as former chief of police, he knew too many dangerous secrets about who really betrayed Mussolini. Pietro Badoglio served both fascist Italy and the government that replaced Mussolini. During his rule in Libya, he played a major role in the genocide of Libyan Arabs, aimed at crushing resistance to Italian colonial control. During the Second Italo-Ethiopian War, Badoglio oversaw the use of chemical weapons like mustard gas against Ethiopian troops and civilians, helping secure Italy's conquest. He later served as chief of staff of Italy's armed forces, but after the failed invasion of Greece, he resigned in 1940. When Mussolini's regime collapsed in 1943, King Emanuele III appointed Badoglio prime minister. He negotiated an armistice, and in October 1943, Italy officially declared war on Germany. He remained head of government until resigning in June 1944. As Cold War tensions grew, the British viewed Badoglio as important for a future anti-communist Italy, and he was never prosecuted for war crimes in Africa. He died of heart failure on November 1st, 1956, aged 85, in his hometown. Ugo Cavallero replaced Badoglio as chief of the defense staff. He was sent to command Italian forces in the failing Greco-Italian War, where he stopped the Greek advance but couldn't end the stalemate until German intervention in 1941. Cavallero was promoted to Marshal in July 42, but after Italy's defeats in North Africa and the disaster in Russia, he was dismissed in 43. Following the fall of Mussolini, the new Prime Minister, Badoglio, ordered his arrest. In a letter defending himself, Cavallero claimed he had opposed Mussolini and fascism. The Germans later freed him, and Field Marshal Albert Kesselring offered him command of the armed forces of the Italian Social Republic. However, Cavallero's letter raised doubts about his loyalty. On September 14, 1943, he was found dead from a gunshot wound to the temple in the garden of a hotel in Frascati after meeting Kesselring the night before. It remains unclear whether he was assassinated or took his own life. Reports suggest he had refused further cooperation with Germany. Antonio Gandin became commander of the Acqui division in 1942, fighting on the Russian front. After Italy surrendered to the Allies in 43, German forces ordered his troops stationed on the Greek island of Cephalonia to disarm. Gandin, who admired Hitler, at first considered siding with the Germans, but instead held a vote among his soldiers who chose to resist. So the division fought the German takeover of the island. They lost after they ran out of ammo. What followed became known as the Cephalonia Massacre, where around 5,000 Italian soldiers were executed and around 3,000 drowned when the Allies sank German ships that transported survivors to internment camps. Gandin and his staff were taken prisoner and executed by firing squad. Reportedly, he refused a blindfold and shouted, "Long live Italy, long live the king," before being shot. Emilio De Bono was one of the original 4 leaders who helped organize Mussolini's 1922 march on Rome. He later commanded the opening phase of Italy's invasion of Ethiopia and became the first governor before being replaced by Graziani for being too lenient toward the local population. De Bono was also involved in Italy's anti-partisan campaigns in Libya, including the use of poison gas in concentration camps. On July 25, 1943, De Bono joined the Grand Council in voting to remove Mussolini from power. After Mussolini was rescued by Germany, De Bono and the other council members were arrested and tried for treason in Verona. On January 11, 1944, the 77-year-old De Bono was tied to a chair and shot in the back. Giovanni Messe is widely considered Italy's best field commander of World War II, earning success on the Eastern Front and during the Tunisia campaign. In North Africa, he led a defensive campaign against advancing British and Allied forces, but shortages of men and supplies made defeat inevitable. After the Axis collapse at Tunis in May 1943, Messe and German General Kurt Freiherr von Liebenstein surrendered to British and New Zealand troops. But as a loyal supporter of the monarchy, Messe soon returned to service after Italy's armistice and became chief of staff of the Italian co-belligerent army, serving until retiring in 1947. After the war, he helped found the anti-communist paramilitary group Armata Italiana della Libertà, joined by dozens of generals and admirals. He later focused on writing and also served in the Italian Senate. Messe died of natural causes in Rome on December 18, 1968, aged 85. Duke Amedeo di Savoia-Aosta was a respected Italian commander and relative of the ruling house of Savoy. Known for his athletic lifestyle and personal charisma, he served as Viceroy of Ethiopia after the earlier rule of Rodolfo Graziani. When Italy entered World War II, he became commander of Italian forces in the East African Campaign. He led early offensives into Sudan and Kenya, and oversaw the invasion of British Somaliland. But by 1941, his forces were cut off, outnumbered and isolated from Italy as British and Commonwealth troops advanced from all sides. He made a final stand at Amba Alagi mountain, despite knowing defeat was unavoidable. Surrounded and without water, he surrendered in May 1941 after strong resistance, with his troops allowed to surrender with honors of war. He was interned in a camp in Nairobi, Kenya, where he died on March 3, 1942 at age 43 from tuberculosis and malaria. Mario Robotti commanded the Italian 11th Corps during the Axis invasion of Yugoslavia in 1941 and later replaced Roatta as commander of the Italian Second Army in occupied Yugoslavia. Tasked with crushing resistance in Slovenia and Croatia, Robotti enforced Mussolini's policy of pacifying the region by any means, including plans for mass imprisonment and displacement of Slovenes to make room for Italian settlers. During anti-partisan operations, he became known for his brutality and once complained to his officers that they were not slaughtering enough people. After the armistice, Robotti avoided capture by the Germans and retired to private life in Rapallo with his family. He died there of natural causes on December 3rd, 1955. Sebastiano Visconti Prasca is best known for leading the disastrous opening invasion of Greece in 1940 during the Greco-Italian War. But the offensive quickly collapsed, and after only 2 weeks he was removed from command for incompetence. After Italy switched sides in 1943, Prasca joined the Italian resistance against the Germans. The Germans later captured him and sentenced him to death, but the sentence was reduced to imprisonment. Released in 1945, he witnessed the Soviets entering Berlin. Returning to Italy later that year, he repeatedly tried to rejoin the military, but was refused each time. He spent his final years writing and died of natural causes near Rome on February 25, 1961, aged 77. Italo Gariboldi commanded the Italian Fifth Army in Libya, briefly led the collapsed 10th Army during Operation Compass, and served as Governor-General of Libya in 1941. Later, he led the 8th Army during the disastrous Battle of Stalingrad. Despite the losses, he was awarded the Knight's Cross of the Iron Cross by Adolf Hitler personally for his role in the campaign. After the fall of Benito Mussolini, Gariboldi was jailed by the Germans and later sentenced to 10 years for treason. He was released in 1944 after Allied intervention. He died of natural causes in Rome on February 9, 1970 at the age of 90.